Welcome to Fictiv. Hope everyone's enjoying the drinks, the food. It's really nice to have everyone here. It's pretty intimate. I'm going to use my intimate voice now. But yeah, welcome to Fictiv. My name is Jackie. I'll be moderating tonight. I'm also a product designer here at Fictiv. Quick introduction to Fictiv. We help designers and engineers go from 0 to 1,000 parts really, really quickly. And so we offer 3D printing services, so you can produce parts in 24 hours, CNC machine parts in 3 days. And so when we're not building, we're tearing down fake Apple Watches in the name of science and writing about it for you guys to enjoy. And so we're in the trenches of the hardware community, just like a lot of you guys are. And we're really, really grateful that you guys are here with us. We love putting on events like this. Last week we talked about products. This week we're talking about design. And so, yeah, so design's a very near and dear topic to me. Design, to me, establishes how users are able to learn about the value of your product and how users actually consume it in an experience. And so we're here to have an open discussion on that today, have some lovely panelists that will introduce themselves shortly. But before we kick it off, I want to start with a quote. Design isn't about eye candy, it's about problem solving. If your design isn't solving quantifiable issues, then it isn't design, it's decoration. And so some other people might feel otherwise, but that's what we're here to talk about. I'll kick it off with Eva from Design Concepts.
Hi, I'm Eva Lutz. I'm from Design Concepts, so I'm actually the new GM. We are the small, scrappy SF office of a Madison-based design firm that's been around for 50 years. So you may not have heard of us because we're kind of that quiet Midwest, you know, we don't like to raise any ripples. But we're in the SF now, and we're actually here. We're proud to be here, and we're building our presence. So we have multidisciplinary design. So we have it all. We do ME. We have full functioning three-story prototype facility in Madison. We have facilities here as well. So we do HF, UX, UI, ME, ID, graphic design. Justin, did I miss anything?
Research.
And research. Thank you, which is actually what I do. So I'm an industrial designer and a design researcher. So yeah, it's nice for me to forget what I do. But we are thrilled to be here and collaborating with Fictiv. So thank you so much for the opportunity to do this together.
Hi everyone, my name is Jennifer McCormick and I am a researcher, UX researcher to be more specific. I have a consulting firm here in San Francisco called User Lens, and I work with a lot of hardware focused companies and products like GoPro and Samsung and Amazon. And I wanted to thank Madeline and Finn for inviting me here tonight. This is a super exciting opportunity for me to share with you guys a little bit about UX research. Okay.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex Granieri. I'm a mechanical design engineer currently at Facebook. Been in the product design space for several years now, and good friend Jackie here and I went to grad school together in the area and thought I could lend a couple insights on the subject. But yeah, I absolutely love problem solving really as a generality and digging deep into design issues as well as just honestly building things for fun. So hopefully we have an open and interesting discussion today.
Awesome. So when we talk about design, I think it's synonymous with the word user as well. And so when you guys talk about design and go through that design process, how does the end user play in that process of design?
To me, it's usually the start point. I know a lot of people will say that as a fairly trite answer to what do you start with design, start with the user, work backwards. But that's really the basis for my personal design philosophies as well as the ones we employ usually throughout our company. But it tends to be, problem-based questions that are really the basis for where can you add value, where can you add impact, how can you be really addressing a meaty, deep challenge, and that usually comes from probative need finding and in discussions with users and either a user group or individuals sometimes. And then that delves out into a larger scope of work. But yeah, to me, that's the core.
So I work a lot with design in sort of the role of partnership. I focus exclusively on research. And so I work a lot with designers and product engineers. And the way I think of design in my work is as design as a philosophy or an ideology. And this is really sort of to think about design as sort of a point of view in the world, and something the designer brings to the table is this sort of idea or philosophy that in practice becomes a framework for making decisions and editing whatever it is that you want to produce or offer to the world. And then the user equation is the person who may be receiving that product or whatever it is that the designer puts into the world. And it's sort of a moment or a relationship over time. And so I kind of see it more of a high level that way. An example would be, we were just all discussing my colleague Ava's beautiful ensemble today, including her jacket. And and she was explaining to us the thought behind the selection of her jacket. And that was really a process for her, in my point of view, of designing her outfit in a way to make herself, present herself to the world and to invite you to engage with her. So you can think about yourself being a designer in everything you do and every choice you make. And products are one major artifact of design.
So, design. That's such a big word these days. It's like saying I'm a designer is like saying I'm a teacher, right? So it's one of those things that we all do. I think of it as a process. And user, yes, I mean definitely. It is the core. It is the start. Words I like to use really is thinking about insights and needs. So it's beyond just the user, it's also understanding what it is. Many times those are unarticulated. So as designers, as practitioners, I would say here in this room, we've evolved design beyond just, perhaps we're not generalists, perhaps we are truly professionals. So that's another thing, as design becomes an activity that everyone is doing, how do we define ourselves as unique and how do we elevate that? So I would say that we are professionals in design. And so what we have to do, I think, is figure out how to mine and how to understand the user and those unarticulated needs and insights. So that's where I start.
Cool. So design as a philosophy, design as a practice. I think we talk about design, but so often we work with like high profile clients, like, I don't know, like Tesla and Lab 126 and GoPro and et cetera. How do you guys balance like validating and design with kind of the business needs with your clients?
Wow, that's a tough one. It's a big question. So I do a lot of consumer product. So that's my experience. I do a lot of CPG work as well as pharma. So, OTC drugs. So for some of them, some of my clients are, decades-long practitioners of design. So in that case, they've already understand it. They understand the process, and many times they're moving you along, right? They're sharing with you their method, it's practice, it's easy. Some, it's not. And many times depending upon which division and which silo you're working with, there's different languages of design. So many times it's understanding who you're working with and what language you need to do, what nuance.
Yeah, so with my client work, most of the time, folks will come to me, hello.
Got a floating chair here.
Yeah. Okay, so a lot of times with my clients, whether they're a startup or a Fortune 500 company, they'll come to me with like sort of a basic technology or a basic product. And they may or may not have already attributed some sort of business plan to that product or technology. So there may be business driving some development of some new technology, or they may have a technology that they want to make money off of or turn into a product. So it could be either of those sort of starting points. But then what happens is user experience or design will sort of come into play when they start to form this technology into an idea of something that could be used by consumers, or be used by enterprise companies, or be used in entertainment media, whatever it is. And so user experience will come in and help them form any sort of business plan or any kind of instantiation of that technology that would interface with another person. So I don't see the business idea or like a business sort of plan necessarily in conflict with design and research. It's usually sort of a different seat at the table, and then user experience and user research and design can sort of help them take whatever that kernel is of a market or a technology and help them sort of become informed and iterate that so that it can be something that they can put out in the world.
I mean, I think I have the opposite end of the spectrum to this equation. I've never contracted to a larger organization. I'm actually usually the larger organization being contracted from. So, but usually the best experiences that we have are the ones where the value of design is articulated in such a way that people stop asking the question of why are we taking so long? Why is the schedule being pushed out? Why is the cost so high? Because the value of design is really probing and asking the right questions and trying to tease out through the noise. I think as you were mentioning about need finding, it's really getting down to users will tell you they want certain things, but if you pull enough of them, you start seeing patterns in there. And that's just time and careful thought and really just being intimately aware of your customer base and your users. And that's where the true value of design is. So the best experiences that I've had that balance the demands and the needs of a corporation and then business elements to it in terms of cost and profit and all these schedule driving elements to true thoughtful design is just really being upfront and open throughout the process and just laying out this very clear and methodical and sometimes not methodical, but clear and transparent at the very least design process. And so that's usually been the best experiences that I've had from balancing business and design.
So we live in the greatest place for acronyms. So we have things like MVP and BML, build, measure, learn. And so when we think about that cycle, building, measuring, and learning, when you're working with these like high-profile things where you can't really talk about like exactly what you're working on, how do you validate that design process in that scenario?
I don't think I've ever been able to say what I've worked on until about 3 years after it's actually been released. So almost all of the design work that I've ever done has this long phase of I can't talk to people about it. And especially when you're actually doing the design work or you're doing the research or you're contracting with these different companies, everything's so heavily under NDA, focus groups, bring somebody in, shelter them off into a little room, and then suddenly the kimono opens up and say, hey, we're doing this really cool thing. I'd love to hear your opinion on it. So it's this duality between high levels of secrecy and then really trying to get honest and probative answers from people. So it's an interesting dance we play in the Valley here because everyone sort of knows what everyone else is doing as a company, but no one's really sure how or why. And you're talking to focus groups and you're trying to get a non-biased audience from people in the Valley, and everyone sort of has their own biases. So once you establish that bias is in the equation, and you just take that as a given, you can really get past the fact that you're never really going to be true open and honest about every subject, but still be able to get some really valuable insights, though there's going to be secrecy at every stage, basically. That's my experience thus far.
Great. So making sure I understand the question. So talking about working on confidential projects and then how do you do the testing and iteration you need to make sure that product is something people will enjoy and integrate into their lives. Well, absolutely. So I focus a lot on research methodology. So I help teams understand and think through what are some of the right methods and what are some of the right ways to gather data that can be fruitful for them to answer their research questions. And the truth about research is you're never going to have like the perfect study. You're never going to have the right answer. Research is very much like a lens. So if you want to focus on a certain area and sort of deeply understand that, if you focus your attention to this one sort of phenomena, you are necessarily unfocusing your attention on everything else. And so every single research effort you do, whether it's interviewing an individual, gathering click data, doing an A/B test, every single study you're going to do is going to have some sort of research limitation. So you're always having to understand when you gather information from people directly, qualitative or quantitatively, whichever way it is, the process of gathering data is always going to be inherently limited. So now, that aside, keeping that in mind, your customer or your team is going to be like, hey, guess what? You're the researcher. You get to go get us all of our user data. But wait a second, we don't want you to talk to users. Or wait a second, like we're very, very concerned about this getting out. And it does. Every once in a while, leaks will happen. So what I do as a researcher is I look at all my limitations and all of the resources I have to work with, and I say, okay, what kind of data can we get that is going to be reliable and is going to be representative of your user base? So in the instance of get data for us, but don't go outside of our company, which happens a lot, I may try to identify employees of the company who exhibit the behaviors that this particular product is trying to address. And then when I test with them, or when I do some sort of evaluation or walk through with them to get this sort of use data that's so important, I'll focus on behaviors instead of sort of evaluation. Or I'll focus on actions and interactions versus emotions. And so I'll try to understand what it is that I can gather that I believe is going to be representative and sort of eliminate any concern for an emotional connection to the product due to them being in that company or beneficiaries of stock or whatever it is. So the idea is just understand what the resources you have at the time and understand the data you're trying to gather, and then therefore say, what can I give you? Let's do this slice here, and we'll do this slice, later. You won't have this information at this point. You'll just have some behaviors data, and we'll go from there. So it's understanding what you have to work with and what you can work with, so you're not relying too much on concerns for things like bias.
So I guess really just to build on that, right? Sometimes it's can I piece it? Can I cut this problem apart and look at segments? So I can kind of keep the whole secret together, but look at specific areas and be able to research those. A firm believer in sometimes you need to do an expert panel. So that's actually, you can really hold confidentiality more. I mean, you have to watch that, but the knowledge you learn becomes suspect after a while. But when you have a case where you really have confidentiality issues and you cannot go out to the general public, you can get a lot of information from them. We use KOLs a lot, so that's kind of key opinion leaders as well, which are once again kind of more professionals that we can go out and seek their opinions and expose things to them. It's another really effective method when you have confidentiality issues. So, I mean, I think it's an issue. I think you have to take your design and you really use your design process to solve it, right? So you've got the problem and how you're gonna get what you need to do. So.
Cool. So getting past the secrecy, I think I spent most of my time filtering user needs and user wants. How do you guys think about differentiating the two, prioritizing, and et cetera?
I mean, to me, I'm a car guy, so I can give you the expression. Back when Henry Ford was making the car, people would have asked for a faster horseless wagon. So, they would have said what they wanted based on what they knew at the time. So if you shift the paradigm and you take what they're saying, I want to get from A to B faster, and you have a different solution to that, that's fulfilling a need. Whereas the want would have been, I have this thing that I know well, I want to make it better. So sometimes it's just rephrasing the question, reframing the problem statement to come up with a better solution. We have that all, much more current examples with, umpteen million different pieces of consumer electronics that hit the market every day that fulfill a specific need. It's really our challenge to filter through the noise of all the wants to really find the kernels of need. And that's really what our job as designers is. So let you guys elaborate on that, but that's my kernel.
Yeah, I think of it slightly differently, actually, so, which is great.
Excellent.
Good counterpoint. Okay, so I think it's really important to first really try to define what we mean by user. A user, in my mind, is not a person, but a moment in time. It's a role. Every day, we're users of different types of products. We were just talking about this earlier with Alex from ShapeScale. But yeah, so user, there's a sort of a shift happening, which I think is really exciting, and that's that users used to be considered this like simple idea of a person who needs to be saved from themselves by the designers and the researchers of the world who knows what's best for them, right? And that we do these tests and we come back and we know the users want this and they don't want that. But actually, interestingly, we're all learning in consumer electronics especially that there's not a moment in time where something works or doesn't work. Like people, they bring consumer electronics in their home, they live with them or they throw them away immediately. They modify things in their lives, they adapt their lives, they're makers in their own life. Like people have messy, complex lives. And when they use a product or use a piece of software, that's one moment in their lives. And so we just want to make sure that we understand when we're talking about a user, it's this moment of interaction, and it's a relationship between a user and a product at that moment. So thinking about wants and needs in that framework, which I think is really important to move us all forward, especially in consumer electronics. A need, in my mind, is sort of a basic unit level sort of thing that allows somebody to have that interface, to have that moment of use. It could be an affordance, like a handle, right? It could be a basic motivation, like I need to get from point A to point B. It could be, a need could be an understanding, like I know that with this speaker, I need to talk to it to get it to do something. So a need is really that basic, smallest unit level to get someone to actually start engaging with the product. And in my mind, a want is something that you include in a product, be it information, be it design, be it communication, that allows people to build a relationship with a product over time. It's that thing that says, when you interview a consumer or user and they say, hey, I get it, I can talk to the speaker, but what I really want is to be able to move it from the kitchen to the bathroom because really the use here is hands-free. So that's a want, but it's what people tell you, I want to take this thing and I want to build a relationship with it, I want to become endeared to it, I want to love it, I want to live with it. So that's kind of how I think about it.
So I guess I'll build once again. So I think there's also levels of need. So understanding that is really important. So, if I'm a diabetic and I need insulin, that's a very specific need. And I'm probably willing to deal with a lot more friction on that delivery than I am if I want to stream my favorite song, just automatically because I'm in my car and it's 5 o'clock and that's, whatever. So I think understanding those nuances is really important when we're, designing that experience and what success looks like. So, want, we all want, and that is many times I think it's understanding and using research. I'm really interested in actually kind of trying to mine the unarticulated, what they can't even communicate. So understanding even what the user can't even tell you that it is that they want. And many times they don't even have the language to be able to do that. So I think we have to really look at kind of some new methodologies as well, kind of new ways of trying to find those unarticulated needs that they can't even express. They just know that there's this frustration. They just know that their life isn't fulfilled or that experience is not right. They can't tell you what it is. They just know it's not. And that we as designers have to find methods to be able to kind of uncover what that is. And I think we have to look at some new approaches to do that. So.
Awesome. So I think some people perceive design as a soft science, and it's not quantifiable. I mean, to me, it's very, very quantifiable. How do you guys think about, like, how do you set the metric of success for your design in that process?
Would you like to start this
Yeah,
time?
you.
Oh,
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. It's only fair.
Success. So success in design. That's really interesting. Well, obviously adoption. I think that's really important. So if you design people something and people love it and they use it, then it was a success, right? Or if it actually makes a difference in people's lives. So I've designed just about everything. I'm probably one of the older people in this room. I've designed for over 25 years. I've done everything from toys to medical. So design things that just have brought joy to people's lives, from Star Wars and everything else to something that's going to deliver insulin to someone. So and I'm as thrilled as saving someone's life as I'm thrilled when you get letters from kids who say, "Oh my God, this is my favorite toy. Thank you so much for inventing that. It made my day. It's the most exciting thing ever." And that is just as wonderful, right? So all different needs, all different joys, but it's really when someone uses it and they appreciate it and they understand the thought and the process that went behind it and that it's made a difference. I think that's really what, to me, that's success. That's what design is.
Yeah, I love that, and so I'm going to build on that. So make a difference in people's lives. Like that's, I think, what we all want to do when we have a spark or an idea for an electronic or product or app. We all want to make that impactful, have that impactful presence in people's lives. And so the way that I've been thinking about this a lot lately, specifically when it comes to consumer electronics, is this idea that we're in a new era where we understand that there's a lot of options out there, and consumer electronics are becoming more and more part of people's lives. I mean, they always have been, but like now we've got consumer product after consumer product, from 3 choices of Fitbits to Apple Watches and all that kind of stuff. And so what's happening is we're seeing a culture where people are starting to get fatigued with disposable products, and sustainable products are actually a design philosophy. And so what we should all strive for at this point is the idea that we create products that endear themselves to people and eventually achieve heirloom status. Something that people love so much that it becomes something that they not only adopt into their lives, but are endeared to and have meaning in their life. Those are the products we want to deliver to people. And so those are the kind of metrics that we look at, is like, do they dispose them or do they keep them? Do they use them over time? Do they do things to them that endear the product to them over time? Like, do they install the updates regularly? Do they modify the product to meet their own specific needs? Do they update it or add to it to increase the longevity of use? Like, these are the types of things that we should all strive for, is that meaningful long-term adoption. And there are design philosophies that can guide you, and there are research methods that can help you measure this. Something that I'll just throw out there for you guys, if you're not familiar with it yet, is this really cool movement in design called slow design. I don't know if anyone's heard of slow design, but check it out, and I think it'll really inspire you to think about making products that endear themselves to people. So like, one aspect of slow design is the idea that you could incorporate an attribute like reveal. So your product could have a piece of it that reveals how it works on the inside, like a juicer. Instead of having the juicing part be opaque, it could be clear. So you could take the time to understand how the product works and engage in the product. Another aspect of slow design is reflect and contemplate. So how do you design something that inspires people to spend more time looking at it and thinking about it and thinking about its use? And the more you can engage people in the product use and all these different sort of design aspects, the more they endear themselves to to your user. So there's so many wonderful ways to think about design that you can observe and quantify later in terms of long-term use.
I usually sum it up sort of as understanding and intuition. If a customer can pick something up or a user can pick something up, and I say this in a physical sense, but you can imagine this extrapolating to software as well. But if you put a piece of information or a product in front of them and they just know what to do with it, and they see why this is an impactful piece of a thing in their life, that to me is success. Quantifiable, binary perhaps, yes or no. So I have a hard time with the quantifying element of it, I will admit, but you know it when it's there. When you can put a piece of technology, or it's usually in my case technology, in front of someone and it's like, yes, I get this. And whether it be a simple, I can now do this one task better, or wow, this opens up a whole new world of opportunities for interactions, that to me is a success for a product. And I'll be honest, it's only happened a couple times when I've done things that it's truly that impactful when you put it down in front of someone. But when it happens, man, it's a beautiful thing.
I guess I just want to, this is obviously, it's all about the interface, but I guess I also design just product, just physical product. And I also design consumables. And I guess I just want to make sure that some of the most rewarding product I've actually designed has actually been consumable. It's something that's been thrown away, but it's actually designing a chemistry or understanding a need. And for instance, one of the areas I've worked on is like incontinence, which oh my God, who wants to talk about that? But you know what? When you are in a focus group, when you are talking to people, and they're trying your product, and that's the first time they've been able, to get out of the house, to leave the house, to go and see their kids doing a play and have a life that they hadn't been able to have, an experience because of a product or a chemistry you were able to deliver to them. It doesn't have to be wired, it doesn't have to be technology. It is in its own way, but it's manifested in a consumable. So I guess I just want to say, I always think design is bigger than just a smart device, and the same principles apply, and it's just as meaningful. So anyway, just a little
broadening.
Thank you. Yeah, little broadening.
Perfect.
Yeah, thank you so much. I think there's a lot of insights there. But moral of the story is we need better microphones. So if someone could design a better battery and maybe more intuitive buttons, because up doesn't really seem like it's for on and off. Anyways, that concludes our regularly scheduled programming. Yeah, we'll be around. Thank you guys so much for coming. We're a community together. Thank you.